Today we will be creating a robot that has the illusion of metal. We want the texture of galvanized steel in our painting, but also a robot that looks very useful. Today we will begin by first planning our robot in a big draft. I want us to get used to drawing big to prepare for drawing big on our watercolor paper. I've given you a few different questions to think about as you're planning. Your robot's job, is it standing somewhere, or maybe even how does it move is a better question. Does your robot turn on? What does your robot eat, or is there a power source for your robot? How does it recharge? And does it communicate with its controller somehow? The first thing I like to do is start with the shape of the head that I'm going to use to make sure that I have enough space for my body and the rest of how my robot is going to be moving. No matter what it is that you're adding to your robot, we want to make sure that we have shapes instead of lines. This will help us later when we are applying paint to our robot to be able to fill in those spaces. As we're planning our work today, let's think of things that make machines look mechanical. Things like gauges, pipes, meters, vents, and rivets that are in metal. When metal is welded together, oftentimes they will use a bolt or a rivet to make the metal stay together. Since our goal is to try and make our robot look metallic, we definitely want to include some of those different types of elements. A gauge or meter or some type of dial on your robot will help to enhance this illusion. In plumbing, we often see gauges to measure pressure and how liquid moves through the apparatus. If your robot has some type of digestive system, they may want to have some type of gauge to measure their pressure or their work effort. Let's look at a few ways that machines in everyday life move. You may find that some machines have tracks, others have wheels, some have just a stationary position and they can twist around, while other machines are very, very advanced and can walk like a human. So like the examples that we saw, I included some rivets and gauges or pressure mechanisms for my robot as well. Now this planning draft that we have, we are actually going to use again on our actual texture robot that we will be doing after this project. So don't worry about this one for now, but we are going to take this and use it to help us sketch out our final draft. Don't forget about your name, class, and number on the back. And now, just like we did with our planning draft, we want to start with the head and the bottom of our robot to try and fill up our paper. We are going to be sketching lightly on our watercolor paper. So feather tip of our pencil as we are moving. Always start with the big shapes first to plan out the spacing of your robot on your paper. Once we finish sketching out our idea onto our final draft paper, we are now ready to go ahead and use zebra marker to outline our work. Now for our sketching, we didn't really use a ruler, but it is absolutely a must now that you are finished and using zebra marker that wherever there is a straight line, you use your ruler. Remember, when we are using our ruler, we want to draw towards our body. Spread your fingers out on the ruler wide so that you can press against the ruler without it moving, and move your zebra marker towards your body. So if you need to move your paper to make that happen, then twist and draw towards your body. After we finished outlining our robot with our zebra marker, making sure that we are using a ruler for any straight parts, we want to give our robot a good erasing. As we begin painting our robot with watercolor, our goal is to create the illusion of metal. But not just any metal, we want to create rusted metal to look like our robot has been a little bit weathered or used, really, not new and straight out of the box. We are going to be using watercolor today in 3 different colors. We have black, what's called Payne's gray, which is a bluish gray, and burnt sienna, which is an orangish rust color. I would highly recommend we primarily use our Payne's gray color in the center of your palette to create that metallic look. You'll also have a cup of water to make sure and wash your brush before selecting our burnt sienna. Your watercolor is already wet in your tray, so you're welcome to just select it right away before putting it onto your robot. You may want to swirl the paint a little bit as some of the sediment from the paint collects at the bottom, and begin applying that gray color all throughout your robot. It's okay to paint over some of your gauges or even paint outside of your robot, as we are going to be cutting our robot out later. In some of the places where there may be shadow for your robot, feel free to select some of that black and apply it in those shadow places. We don't want our robot to be completely dark, but instead have that gray metal looking texture, kind of like galvanized steel. While that Payne's gray is wet in some areas, we are then going to do a technique called wet into wet to put those rust spots on our robot. So wash your brush, select some of that burnt sienna, and we are just going to tap or drip that burnt sienna into some places where there will be some rusty spots. Think of the places that are connected together, like the wrists or the neck, that may rust a little bit more easily. Don't overdo it, because if your robot is too rusty, they can't work any longer. And finally, the very last thing that we are going to be doing today is applying a little bit of salt, table salt, to your watercolor. This will create some textured areas in your paint, especially the places where it is wet. We are going to sprinkle some salt on, and notice how the salt will start to collect the water and make a little bit of a textured area in that place. Our goal has been and will be creating texture in our artwork. So any way that we can do that is wonderful. The salt will help to make our metal look like the galvanized steel that we are striving for. Just a little sprinkle here and there will help to collect the water and draw the color to it, creating a little bit of a crystallized look. So once you are done with your watercolor for your robot, you are welcome to put it on the drying rack. It's okay to not fill in some spaces. Later we will add some bright color to make it look like they are electric parts of your robot. Finally, we're just going to do a very quick watercolor background for our robot using purples and blues and salt for texture. Begin by writing your name, class, and number on the back, and then we're going to do a bit of a clever step, which is to first spray your table with water and place your paper onto the wet table. This will help prevent your paper from curling up as we get it wet on top now. So take your spray bottle, wet the top of your paper, and you can take your hand and wipe the water around before now applying watercolor directly onto your paper. We are going to do some very quick and random splotches of mixtures of blue and purple on our paper. This process should take you, definitely less than 10 minutes, but 5 would be good because we don't want to overwork it. Quick, quick, quick. Mix the blues. You don't even need to wash your brush in between choosing different colors. Purple. If your paper starts to curl up like this, just take the bottom and pull it down. It's okay even if you leave some places that are wet or white on your paper. That is no big deal. We just want to kind of randomly apply color along our paper. Now we're going to go ahead and let it sit on our table for a little bit until I can come around and give you some salt on top of your painting. Our salt again will draw the water towards itself, creating a sprinkled look that has texture on our paper. You can already see it starting to work on our paper. Once salt is on our paper, we can go ahead and place it on the drying rack as well. And we will be done with our robot painting for today until we put them all together next class. Okay, our texture robots have been planned, sketched, painted, and given a place to stand. Boys and girls, today we are going to be putting together our robot onto our background. You'll notice that there is still some salt that has been left over. You're welcome to rub that off, both the background and your robot. But then we are going to be cutting our robot and placing him onto his background paper, making sure that their feet are on the black strip at the bottom. Whenever I'm cutting something that's a little bit complicated, I first do some chunk cutting. Cut away all this extra outside paper to make it easier to move my paper in my hands. When it comes to a place like this that is a closed shape inside, we want to bend your paper and add a little snip hole before moving your scissor inside and trying your best to cut it without snipping your robot. If it's a really small place, then go ahead and you may leave it closed. For example, this one up here, I'm just going to go ahead and cut a general outline around the outside of this shape. try your best with your cutting, but like I said, if there's some places that are really small you can't get inside, or things that are a little bit too complicated to cut out, like my tractor wheel, go ahead and just cut around it. That is okay. Now we are going to glue our robot onto our foundation piece at the bottom. Please use stick glue today for that. And we want to make sure to get glue on all the little appendages and small pieces that might pop up. For things like our gauges or communication mechanisms, I will also be giving you a few fluorescent looking paint sticks. These can be used to give it an electric look. So for my pressure gauge, I'm going to use a little bit of green. And we only want to use these in places where we haven't painted. So if you have painted the galvanized steel, we want to leave those places without our paint sticks. But these are really great for the light bulbs that you may have added or wires. All right, my amazing grade 3 artists, I hope that you enjoyed creating your implied texture robot that features the illusion of metal using some watercolor techniques.